The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 5 ancient races sat at the top of all known civilization. They called themselves the Elder Races, and they believed they had seen everything the universe could offer. They were wrong. The Velith were the tallest. They stood 3 meters high with 4 arms and 4 eyes. Their skin was like gray stone, and their voices rumbled like thunder. The Moral lived in water. Their ships were filled with dark oceans, and they breathed through gills that glowed blue in the dark. The Dren were made of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies and created rainbows wherever they walked. The Kiver were insects. Millions of them moved as one mind, building ships from their own bodies. The Orith could read thoughts. They floated in the air, their pale bodies wrapped in robes, their eyes always closed. Together, these 5 races controlled everything. When new species reached the stars, the Council gave them a choice: serve or die. In 12,000 years, every species had chosen to serve. The Council had forgotten what it felt like to hear the word no. Then humanity arrived. The first human ships appeared in the outer sectors on a cold morning in the year 2289. They were small and slow. Their metal was weak. Their weapons were primitive. Council observers watched them with mild interest. These creatures came from a small blue planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. They called it Earth. The observers sent their reports. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. They lived for less than 100 years. They spent most of their short lives fighting each other over land, resources, and ideas. They seemed to hate themselves as much as they hated their enemies. High Arbiter Thalos of the Velith read these reports and laughed. He had conquered 60 species in his long life. He knew weakness when he saw it. These humans were no different from all the others. They would kneel. They always did. For 50 years, the Council watched humanity spread across the stars. They built colonies on dead worlds and made them green. They dug mines in asteroids and built stations in the void. They multiplied like insects, filling every corner of space they could reach. And still, they fought among themselves. There were wars between colonies. There were rebellions and revolutions. There was always blood. Thalos decided it was time. Humanity had grown large enough to be useful. Their bodies were strong enough for labor. Their minds were clever enough for simple tasks. They would make excellent servants. He sent the summons to Earth. Ambassador Una arrived at Station Helix 3 weeks later. She was small even by human standards. Her black hair was tied back in a simple knot. Her dark eyes were calm and steady. She wore a plain gray suit with no decorations. She carried no weapons. She came alone. The grand chamber of Station Helix was built to intimidate. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. The floor was made of glass, and beneath it, stars burned in the endless dark. The 5 elder races sat on thrones of light. Looking down at the small human woman standing in the center of the room, Talos spoke first. His voice filled the chamber like rolling thunder. Human, you stand before the Galactic Council. We have watched your species crawl across the stars for 50 of your years. We have studied your history. We have measured your worth. Now we will tell you your place in our order. Una said nothing. She simply waited. Thalos continued. You will surrender 60% of your colonies to Council control. You will submit to genetic cataloging so we may breed the most useful traits from your population. You will provide labor tributes of 10 million workers each cycle for the next 500 cycles. In return, we will allow your species to exist. The other elder races watched in silence. The Orith High Telepath, a being named Saren, reached out with her mind to touch Una's thoughts. She expected to find fear. She expected to find the desperate calculations of a trapped animal looking for escape. Instead, she found something strange. Something that felt like deep water before a storm, calm on the surface. Violent underneath, Una spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber without effort. And if we refuse, Talos leaned forward. All 4 of his eyes focused on the tiny woman below. Then your species will learn what war truly means. We have seen your history, human. Your world wars, your civil conflicts, your endless rivers of blood spilled over patches of dirt. We know you fear death. We know you break. We have conquered species far stronger than yours. You are nothing. Una smiled. It was a small smile, gentle even, but something about it made Saren pull back her mental touch as if she had been burned. You have studied our wars, Una said, but I do not think you understood them. Thalos laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like breaking rocks. What is there to understand? You kill each other over nothing. You destroy your own cities. You burn your own fields. You are a species addicted to self-destruction. Yes, Una agreed. We are, she paused, and we are very, very good at it. The chamber fell silent. Even the Kiver, who had no emotions as other races understood them, felt something shift in the air. Una raised her hand. A small device sat in her palm. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above her head. It showed a single word in the human language. No. This is Earth's response to your demands, Una said. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not submit to your breeding programs. We will not send our children to die in your mines and factories. We are not your servants. We are not your slaves. We are humanity, and we bow to no one. Talos rose from his throne. His forearms spread wide. His stone-gray skin seemed to darken with rage. Then you choose extinction, he said. We will burn your colonies. We will crack your worlds. We will hunt your species to the last child and erase you from the memory of the stars. Una did not flinch. She did not step back. She looked up at the towering alien with eyes that held no fear. You can try, she said. Others have tried before. We are still here. We will always be here. And when this war is over, High Arbiter, you will understand something that your kind forgot long ago. And what is that? Thalos demanded. Una turned to leave. She walked toward the great doors of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back. You forgot what it costs to fight someone who is not afraid to die. She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her. And in that moment, without knowing it, the Galactic Council began its long fall from power. The war would last 3 years. Millions would die. Stars would burn. And when it was over, the galaxy would never forget the day a small woman from a small planet stood before the masters of the universe and told them. No, but that is a story for another time. For now all that mattered was a single word, hanging in the air of the Grand Chamber like a promise and a threat. No. The news of Ambassador Una's refusal spread across human space like fire through dry grass. On every colony, on every station, on every ship drifting through the dark between stars, people heard what she had said. They heard the words she had spoken on their behalf. No, some were afraid. They knew what the Council could do. They had heard stories of worlds burned to ash, of species erased from existence, of wars that ended before they began because no one could stand against the elder races. These people packed their belongings and fled to the outer edges of human territory, hoping the darkness would hide them. But others felt something different. Something that had slept in human hearts for generations, waiting to be awakened. They felt anger. They felt pride. They felt the old fire that had driven their ancestors across oceans and continents, and finally into the stars themselves. Fleet Admiral Taiho was one of these people. He stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, the flagship of Earth's first expeditionary force. The ship was old by military standards. Her hull was scarred from a dozen battles. Her engines made sounds they should not make. Her crew called her the Old Lady, and they loved her the way soldiers love things that have kept them alive. Taiho was 53 years old. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was lined with years of worry and hard decisions. He had fought in the Mars Uprising when he was young. He had commanded ships during the Belt conflicts. He had buried friends and enemies alike. He knew what war cost. He knew it better than most, but he also knew what surrender cost. And that price was higher. Tactical Officer Minji stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across her screens. She was young, barely 30, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She had graduated first in her class from the Naval Academy. She had never lost a war game. But this was not a game. "The Kiver Swarm fleet is moving towards Sector 7, she reported. Her voice was steady, but Taiho could hear the tension beneath it. "Current estimates put their numbers at 40 times our strength and the others. The Velith dreadnoughts are heading for Colony. Hannah. The Moral have begun bombarding our mining outposts in the rim. The Dren are holding position, but their crystal ships are charging weapons. The Orith." She paused. "The Orith are doing something. Our sensors cannot tell what." Taiho nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Council was attacking on all fronts at once, trying to overwhelm humanity before they could organize a defense. It was a good strategy. It would have worked against any other species. But humanity was not any other species. "How many ships do we have?" Taiho asked. 412 combat-ready vessels. Another 200 in reserve, but they need repairs. Against how many enemies? Mingi checked her numbers. Combined enemy forces number approximately 18,000 ships. The bridge crew fell silent. Some of them were young, fresh from the academy. They had never seen real combat. Others were veterans, men and women who had bled for humanity in smaller wars. All of them understood what those numbers meant. Taiho turned to face them. He looked at each of their faces in turn. He saw fear in some eyes. He saw doubt in others. But beneath it all, he saw something else. Something that burned like a small flame in the darkness hope. "I know what you were thinking," Taiho said. His voice was calm and clear. "You are thinking that we cannot win. You are thinking that we are outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. You are thinking that this war is already over." He walked to the main display screen. With a gesture, he pulled up images from Earth's history. Old photographs and videos that every human child learned about in school. The beaches of Normandy, where soldiers had walked into certain death to free a continent. The frozen ruins of Stalingrad, where an army had refused to retreat against impossible odds. The jungles of Vietnam, where farmers had fought the greatest military power on Earth and won. The streets of 100 cities where ordinary people had stood against tanks and guns and tyrants. "This is who we are," Taiho said. "This is what we come from. Every person in this fleet carries the blood of survivors. Our ancestors did not conquer the world because they were the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. They conquered it because they refused to give up. They refused to die quietly. They refused to accept that their fate was written by anyone but themselves." He pointed at the images. "The Council thinks our history of war makes us weak. They think that because we have bled, we are afraid of bleeding again. They do not understand. They have evolved past violence. They have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. They have become soft." His voice hardened. "We never had that luxury. We have been fighting since we crawled out of the caves. We fought the cold. We fought the hunger. We fought the predators that wanted to eat us. We fought each other. And every single time, we won. Not because we were better, because we refused to lose." Taiho looked at Minji. "Signal all fleets. Operation Defiance begins at 0600 hours tomorrow." Minji hesitated for just a moment. "Admiral, with those numbers... ... We will take catastrophic losses. I know. Millions of our people will die. I know that too." Taiho's jaw tightened. "Tell them anyway. Tell them we are coming. Tell them that every human with a ship and a gun should prepare for the fight of their lives. Tell them that we may die, but we will not die on our knees. Tell them that the galaxy is about to learn why humanity survived." Minji straightened her back. The fear in her eyes was still there, but something else had joined it. Something fierce and proud. "Yes, Admiral." She turned to her console and began transmitting the orders. Across human space, ships powered up their engines. Soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots said goodbye to their families. Commanders reviewed their battle plans one last time, and on 1,000 different worlds, in 1,000 different languages, people repeated the same words to each other. Words that had been spoken by humans in every war throughout history. Words that meant more than any weapon or ship or strategy. We will not give up. We will not surrender. We will fight. Taiho stood alone at the viewport of the Indomitable, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the greatest military force in galactic history was coming to destroy his species. They had numbers. They had technology. They had 12,000 years of conquest behind them. But humanity had something else. Something the Council had never faced before. Something that could not be measured or calculated or predicted. They had the fury of a species that had finally found something worth fighting for. Tomorrow, the war would begin. Tomorrow, the dying would start. But tonight, Taiho allowed himself a moment of hope. The Council thought they knew what humans were capable of. They thought they understood war. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Battle of the Varan Corridor began on a Tuesday and lasted for 9 days. When it was over, the galaxy would never be the same. The Kiver Swarm came first. Millions of ships, each one grown from the living bodies of insect soldiers, poured through the corridor like a black river. They had destroyed 100 species with this tactic. The sheer weight of their numbers crushed all resistance. No enemy had ever survived contact with the swarm. Captain Sunho of the cruiser Unyielding was the first to meet them. His ship was small compared to the swarm carriers. His crew numbered only 200. His weapons were already damaged from an earlier skirmish. By every measure of military logic, he should have retreated. He should have saved his ship and his crew for another battle. He did not retreat. "All hands, this is the captain," Sunho announced over the ship's speakers. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "The enemy is ahead of us. Our engines are failing. Our weapons are running low. We cannot win this fight." He paused. "But we can hurt them. We can make them remember that they faced us. We can buy time for our brothers and sisters behind us. Every minute we survive is another minute for our people to prepare. Every ship we destroy is one less ship that will threaten our homes." Round him, his crew listened. Some were crying. Some were praying. Some were silent, making peace with what was coming. "I will not order you to die with me," Sunho continued. "Anyone who wishes to evacuate may do so. There is no shame in wanting to live. But I am staying. This ship is staying. And if any of you want to stay with me, I would be honored to die in your company." No one left. The Unyielding charged into the heart of the Kiver Swarm. Her guns blazed until they melted. Her missiles flew until the launchers were empty. Her shields held until they shattered. And when there was nothing left, when the ship was burning and breaking apart, Sunho gave his final order. Ramming speed, the Unyielding struck the swarm's command carrier at full velocity. The explosion was visible from 3 light-years away. When the fire cleared, the carrier was gone, and with it, the command mind that coordinated the entire swarm. For the first time in Kyber history, the swarm fell into chaos. On the moon of a planet called Sarah, Lieutenant Hannah made her own stand. She had 40 Marines under her command. They were holding a communications base that linked 3 human colony worlds. The Velith sent 8,000 shock troops to take it. Hannah knew she could not win. She knew that help was too far away to arrive in time. She knew that she and her soldiers were going to die, so she decided to make their deaths matter. For 72 hours, the 40 Marines held the base against wave after wave of Velith attackers. They fought in the corridors. They fought on the rooftops. They fought in the storage rooms, in the cafeteria, and the medical bay. Every inch of ground cost the Velith blood. Hannah broadcast messages to her troops throughout the siege. Her voice became famous across human space. People gathered around their screens to listen to her, to hear her calm encouragement as she led her soldiers through impossible odds. "They are bigger than us," she said on the second day. "They are stronger than us. But they do not love anything the way we love each other. They do not understand what we are fighting for. Hold the line. Hold it for 1 more hour. And then 1 more. And then 1 more." On the 3rd day, the ammunition ran out. Hannah gathered her surviving soldiers, 18 men and women who had fought without sleep for 3 days. She looked at their tired faces and smiled. "It has been an honor," she said. "Now, let us show them how humans die." She led the final charge with a bayonet fixed to an empty rifle. The Velith killed them all. But they killed them slowly because even at the end, with nothing but blades and bare hands, the humans refused to stop fighting. When the Velith commander finally stood in the ruins of the base, he looked around at the bodies of his own soldiers. 3,000 Velith had died to take a base. He defended by 40 humans. He did not feel like he had one. Dr. Wujin was not a soldier. He was a scientist, a man who had spent 20 years building a mining colony on a small moon in the outer territories. He had a wife and 2 children. He had never fired a weapon in his life. When the Moral Invasion fleet entered his system, he'd made a choice. The mining colony had laser arrays designed to cut asteroids into manageable pieces. Wujin spent 6 hours reprogramming them. When the Moral fleet passed within range, he fired. The lasers sliced through ship after ship. The Moral had never faced such weapons. Their shields were designed for space combat, not for industrial cutting beams that could split a mountain. In 12 minutes, Wujin destroyed 47 warships. Then the surviving Moral turned their guns on his colony. Wujin watched the missiles coming. He had time to evacuate. He had time to save himself. But the laser arrays needed someone to operate them. If he left, the remaining ships would escape to threaten the planet behind him, a planet with 3 million human civilians. He stayed at his post. He kept firing until the colony exploded around him. His family survived. The planet survived. The Moral fleet did not. On the Orith homeworld, High Telepath Saren called an emergency meeting of the Council. She had spent weeks reaching into the minds of captured human soldiers, trying to understand what made them fight so hard. What she found terrified her. "They are not afraid to die," she reported to the other elder races. Her voice shook as she spoke. "They accept death. They welcome it if it serves their purpose. I have touched minds that were at peace with their own destruction, that found joy in sacrifice. This is not madness. This is not desperation. This is something far worse." Elos laughed. The Velith High Arbiter still believed in victory. "We are winning. Their casualties are 10 times ours. They are bleeding themselves dry." "You do not understand," Saren whispered. "Their casualties mean nothing to them. They grieve for their dead. Yes. They weep for every loss. But then they get up, and they fight harder. They do not stop. They never stop. They simply keep coming." She looked at the other council members with something like horror in her ancient eyes. I touched the mind of a dying soldier. She had been shot 3 times. She was bleeding out on the floor of her ship. And do you know what she was thinking? She was thinking about how many of us she had killed. She was counting. And she was satisfied. She was dying, and she was satisfied. Saren's voice dropped to a whisper. "We made a terrible mistake. We woke something that should have been left sleeping. And now, I do not know if we can put it back to sleep." For the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council felt something they had forgotten existed. Fear. 1 year into the war, the Galactic Council believed they were winning. Their reports showed human colonies burning. Their officers reported victory after victory. Their fleets pushed deeper into human territory with each passing month. The numbers told a clear story. Humanity was dying, but numbers do not tell the whole truth. And the Council had not learned to look beyond the numbers. While the elder races celebrated their conquests, something was happening in the shadows. Something that would change everything. Commander Yunji was 40 years old. She had short gray hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. Before the war, she had been a spy. She had spent 15 years stealing secrets from human enemies, moving through dangerous places like a ghost. When the Council attacked, Earth gave her a new mission. Find their weaknesses. Exploit them. Make them bleed. EUNG took a fleet of 30 stealth ships into enemy space. These ships were small and fast, designed to avoid detection. They carried no heavy weapons. They were not meant for open battle. They were meant for something else. For 12 months, the Ghost Fleet mapped everything. They found the Council's supply lines, the routes that carried food and ammunition to the front. They found the communication relays, the stations that linked the elder races to each other. They found the hidden shipyards where new warships were built. They found the fuel depots and the repair stations and the command centers. They found every artery that kept the war machine alive, and then, on a day that would be remembered for 1,000 years, Youngji gave the order. The attacks happened simultaneously across 40 light-years of space. Supply convoys exploded without warning. Communication relays went silent. Shipyards burned. Fuel depots became fireballs that could be seen from neighboring systems in one coordinated strike. Humanity cut the Council's army off from its support. Fleets that had been winning suddenly found themselves without food, without ammunition, without orders. Ships that had been advancing were forced to retreat. Soldiers that had been fighting found themselves stranded and alone. The Council's momentum stopped, and humanity began to push back. While Yoonji struck from the shadows, engineer Junho worked in a secret facility deep beneath Earth's surface. He was a small man with thick glasses and hands that never stopped moving. He had spent his career studying alien technology, trying to understand how the elder races had become so powerful. When the war began, he received a gift, wreckage from destroyed Dren ships. The crystalline aliens built their vessels from living crystal, a material that could repair itself and grow stronger over time. No human scientist had ever understood how it worked. Junho spent 6 months studying the fragments. He slept for hours a night. He forgot to eat. He talked to himself constantly, filling notebooks with equations and diagrams that no one else could understand, and then one morning, he solved it. Within weeks, human shipyards were producing hybrid vessels that combined human engineering with Dren crystal technology. These new ships were faster, stronger, and more durable than anything humanity had built before. They could heal their own wounds. They could adapt to enemy weapons. They could fight for days without rest. The Council had spent millennia developing their technology. Humanity copied it in less than a year, and then they improved it. But the greatest blow to the Council came not from soldiers or scientists. It came from a woman named Nari. Nari was the director of human intelligence. She was 60 years old, with white hair and a soft voice that hit a mind like a steel trap. She had spent decades studying the Council's subject races, species that had surrendered rather than fight. There were dozens of them. Races that had been conquered centuries ago, that had given up their freedom in exchange for survival. They served the Council in mines and factories and farms. They were slaves in all but name, and they had been watching humanity's war with growing interest. Nari reached out to them. Secretly, carefully, she made contact with resistance movements that had survived underground for generations. She gave them weapons. She gave them information. She gave them hope. The Council is not invincible, she told them. Humanity is proving that every day. You do not have to live on your knees forever. You can fight. You can be free, and we will help you. The Tillarni were the first to rise. They were a small race, conquered 800 years ago, used as servants and laborers. No one expected them to rebel. No one thought they had the courage. On a Tuesday morning, they proved everyone wrong. Tellarani workers across a dozen Council worlds attacked their masters simultaneously. They destroyed factories. They sabotaged ships. They freed prisoners. They died in thousands, but they did not stop by Thursday. The Council was fighting on 12 new fronts. Admiral Taiho received the news on the bridge of the Indomitable. The old ship had survived a year of brutal fighting. Her hull was covered with patches and scars. Half her original crew was gone, replaced by fresh faces that grew older every day. But she was still flying, and so was her admiral. Taiho looked at the tactical display. For the first time since the war began, the lights were changing color. Enemy positions were falling. Allied forces were advancing. The tide was turning. "How many ships do we have now?" He asked. Mingi checked her data. She was no longer the nervous young officer she had been a year ago. War had hardened her. War had changed everyone. 480 human vessels, she reported, plus 312 ships from the Telrani uprising. Another 200 from the Morai Federation, who declared independence last week. And we just received word that the Shen Collective is sending 50 more. Tai-Ho allowed himself a small smile. The Council's subjects are turning against them. They are. Minji paused. The Orith are requesting a ceasefire. They want to negotiate. And the others. The Moral are still fighting, but their morale is broken. The Kiver Swarm has lost 3 command minds and cannot coordinate effectively. The Drin are retreating to their home system. She looked up at her admiral. Only the Velith are still fully committed. Then we break the Velith, Tai-Ho said simply. Signal all fleets. We make for the origin point. The origin point was where the Council had first formed 12,000 years ago. It was their sacred ground, their symbol of power. Taking it would not just be a military victory. It would be the end of everything the Council represented. The combined human fleet, now augmented by ships from 6 former Council subjects, began its final journey. Across space, the elder races watched them come. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy that could not be broken. They were about to face that enemy now. Tai-Ho stood at the front of his bridge, watching the stars pass. Somewhere ahead, the greatest battle in galactic history was waiting. They wanted war, he said quietly. Now let us show them what humanity does with war. The Indomitable jumped to hyperspace, and the galaxy held its breath. The Battle of Origin Point lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the galaxy was a different place. The Council had gathered every ship they could find. Velith dreadnoughts, Moral cruisers, Kiver swarm carriers, Dren crystal frigates, Orith command vessels. Thousands of ships, representing 12,000 years of conquest and power, formed a wall around the sacred station where their alliance had been born. They believed it would be enough. They believed that even now, at this late hour, they could crush the human rebellion, restore order to the galaxy. They were wrong. Admiral Tai-Ho led the assault personally. The Indomitable was at the front of the human fleet, her scarred hull shining in the light of a dying star. Beside her flew ships from a dozen species, former slaves who had chosen to fight for their freedom. All ships, Tai-Ho announced over the fleet-wide channel. This is the day we have been fighting for. Behind us are our homes, our families, everyone we love. Ahead of us are the beings who wanted to take all of that away. Today, we show them the price of their arrogance. Today, we end this war. The 2 fleets met in a storm of fire and light. Human ships punched through the Council. Lines with a ferocity that shocked the Elder. Races were Council vessels. Tried to maintain formation and discipline. Human captains improvised and adapted. They used tactics that made no military sense, sacrificing ships to create openings. Splitting into small groups to attack from unexpected angles. Fighting with a creativity that the ancient races could not match. The Kiver swarm tried to overwhelm the human fleet with numbers. But the swarm had lost too many command minds. Without proper coordination, the insect ships crashed into each other, unable to fight as a unified force. The Velith dreadnoughts launched wave after wave of shock troops, but their boarding parties found humans waiting for them. Soldiers who had spent a year learning how to kill Velith with nothing but knives and hate. For every human who fell to Velith died beside them. The Moral tried to retreat, but Commander Yunji's ghost fleet had positioned itself behind the Council lines. There was nowhere to run. The Dren simply stopped fighting. Their crystal ships went dark, withdrawing from the battle without a word. Later, historians would learn that the Dren had seen the future in their strange, crystalline visions. They had seen who would win, and they had decided not to die for a lost cause. Only the Orith tried to negotiate. High telepath Saren reached out with her mind, touching every ship in both fleets simultaneously. "Stop this madness," she pleaded. "Too many have died. We can make peace. We can share the galaxy." Admiral Tai-Ho's response was broadcast on every frequency. "You should have thought of that before you demanded our surrender. You should have thought of that before you burned our colonies and killed our children. Peace will come, Saren, but not on your terms. Never on your terms." 2 hours later, the origin point station fell. High Arbiter Thalos was captured in his command chamber, still roaring orders to fleets that no longer existed. 3 hours after that, human ships entered orbit around the Velith homeworld. Then the Moral homeworld. Then the homeworld of every elder race that had refused to surrender. The war was over. The Treaty of Earth was signed 3 months later. The ceremony was held on the steps of the old United Nations building in New York, a place where humans had once tried to solve their own conflicts with words instead of weapons. The sky was filled with ships from 100 worlds. Watching the moment that would reshape galactic civilization, Ambassador Yuna stood at the center of the gathering. She had aged during the war. There were lines on her face that had not been there before. Her hair had streaks of white that she did not bother to hide, but her eyes were the same, calm, steady, unafraid. Before her knelt the broken remnants of the Galactic Council. Thalos, the mighty High Arbiter, looked small and old without his throne. Saren floated with her eyes closed, too ashamed to meet anyone's gaze. The others stood in silence, waiting to learn their fate. "You believed we were afraid of war," Yuna said. Her voice carried across the plaza, broadcast to billions of beings across the galaxy. "You looked at our history and saw only blood and death. You thought our conflicts made us weak? You were wrong." She stepped closer to Thalos. "We hate war. We mourn every death, every sacrifice, every family torn apart by violence. We know the cost of fighting better than any species in this galaxy, but that is not the same as fear. You forgot something important about war. You forgot that the species who have suffered the most are the ones who fight the hardest. We have been practicing for this moment since we first picked up stones and learned to throw them." Anna paused, letting her words sink in. "The council ruled through fear. You conquered because no one could stand against you. That time is over. From this day forward, there will be no more conquests, no more slaves, no more tributes. Every species in this galaxy will be free to choose its own path." The treaty was signed that afternoon. Humanity received full sovereignty over its colonies and a permanent seat on a reformed galactic council. But more importantly, the Humanity Accords were established. Any species facing unjust aggression could petition Earth for aid. The galaxy would never again be ruled by fear. 20 years passed. The war faded into history. New generations grew up in a galaxy that knew peace. The elder races slowly recovered from their defeat. Learning to live as equals instead of masters, Admiral Taiho retired to a small house on the coast of Korea. He spent his days fishing and reading and watching the waves. He had seen enough of war. He wanted only quiet. One afternoon, a young Velith student came to visit him. She was only 12 years old by her species reckoning, born long after the war had ended. She had come to ask a question that her teachers could not answer. "How did you do it?" she asked. "How did your species defeat 5 ancient empires when you had only a single century of spaceflight? How did you win?" Taiho smiled. It was the same smile that Yuna had given in the Grand Chamber so many years ago. "Your ancestors made us fight for our survival," he said. "That was their mistake. We have been doing that since we crawled out of the oceans. We did not defeat you because we were stronger, or smarter, or more advanced. We defeated you because we had no choice. And when humans have no choice, when our backs are against the wall, and everything we love is at stake, we become something dangerous. Something that will not stop until we win or we are dead." The young Velith shuddered. Taiho patted her shoulder gently. "Do not worry. We prefer peace. We have always preferred peace. We will build with you, trade with you, learn from you, and teach you. We can be the best friends the galaxy has ever seen." His eyes hardened for just a moment. "But remember this war. Remember what we did when we had no choice. Remember the price your ancestors paid for underestimating us. And understand that if anyone ever threatens humanity again, we will do it all over again. We will fight. We will sacrifice. We will win. Because that is what humans do. That is what we have always done." The Velith student nodded slowly. She understood now. She understood why her people had lost. Why the entire council had fallen. They had believed that humanity was afraid of war, and that was the biggest mistake they ever made.